Hello and welcome, and yes, it was a big day on the car. So, there's been a bit of turmoil in Lemon's world, and we get back to actually working on the car. Stay tuned. So, there was a bit of turmoil in the Lemon's world. Turned out to be a bit of a molehill, and I guess it came over to some of us as a mountain, but it's business as usual. So what's that mean for us? We can get back to working on the car and hopefully get it ready for Wakefield. So it's been full steam ahead. I've got the week off work this week to work on the car. Looking forward to getting a vast majority of the work done. So let's have a look, see what happened this weekend.
Okay, finally back to some work on the car. Had to be a big week, so let's get cracking. So what are we doing? We're changing the oil pan gasket actually, which is down there. Let's just, now this is not all coming out of the oil pan, but you can see down here it's leaking quite a lot of fluid, insane amount of fluid actually, but it's a big job. The main reason why is you've got to lift the engine to get it over the crossmember, and the crossmember has to be dropped out, and okay, it's a big job. So I nearly thought about pulling the whole engine out, but I don't want to disturb everything under the inlet manifold, so I've decided to do it in place. Having said that, because we've got to pull so much stuff apart, there's a whole stack of bits and pieces we're going to do along the way. Some of you might remember at Queensland Raceway, that hose there, the top radiator hose, is actually out of a Toyota Land Cruiser, so I've bought a BMW one, we'll fit that. Got a new bottom hose to go on it. I've got a new thermostat housing because this one's plastic and falling apart, so that'll go onto it. So to do all that, the radiator's got to come out, the power steering pump's got to come off because everything in the power steering of this car is leaking. So it's just a lot of work. And while we're doing that, we're also going to change the brakes on the front here, because these are the ones we run at Queensland Raceway which we destroyed, so that will happen as well. So, mammoth amount of work. This is really the most amount of work I want to do before Wakefield. Well, I guess there's nothing more to do than just to get stuck in. So I decided not to film the entire process of getting the sump off, because there's plenty of videos on the internet to do that. Let me just show you the procedure for doing. Well, this is what I did. You can see I've got quite a bit of the car apart. It's a pain of a job, but I got there in the end. Had to take the radiator out. That had to come out. The reason is you have to get the serpentine belt off, and to get the serpentine, the reason you have to get the serpentine belt off is because you have to take the power steering pump off, because the power steering pump's attached to the sump. So that's what you have to do at the top here. Of course, you have to drop the subframe, because on the sump there's a big baffle, and to get out you have to drop the subframe, so hence the engine supported. I'll have a look under here. When you get under here, you have to removed the steering rack. That was the only thing that really gave me any grief. I have to remove the sway bar and then drop the actual subframe of the car off. So you can see the subframe hanging down there. And then once you get all that hanging down, you can actually undo the bolts to reveal the sump gasket and the sump. Now this is leaking quite badly out of the back here. I guess the really good news was, one of the reasons I was going to take the whole engine out of the car was I was worried about the rear main seal. Let's see if we can actually focus up at the back there. But the good news is that the rear main seal looks fine. So all the oil is coming out of the sump gasket and the power steering. So what we're going to do now is put it all back together. Okay, welcome back. Here we are underneath the car. Quite a successful day yesterday. Well, some successes and some failures. The oil pan gasket's changed. That's the good news. You can see the subframe's back in, all that sort of stuff. We can talk about the steering rack in a minute. That was a bit of a drama yesterday. Yeah, there's no real drama in changing the oil pan. It's just a bit dull and boring and time consuming. I think it took me about 6 hours to change it all up. Maybe a bit longer, but hopefully no more oil leaks out of that department anymore. I can tell our timing chain, timing covers are leaking quite badly, but I'm not changing that on this engine. Hopefully it'll be alright for Wakefield. Let's talk about what we're going to do today. So today, putting the cooling system back together. Got a new thermostat housing to go on, new serpentine belt, and put the new hoses and the radiator back in. That's all we're going to do up here today. Hopefully that won't take too long. And then the remainder of the day will be spent here on the front suspension. We've got new suspension to go in, new rotors, and new calipers, and pads there. The failure of the day yesterday was the steering rack. I thought I was very clever buying the steering hoses out of the US. Because in Australia these are $550 for these two hoses. In the US, those two hoses there are $75. But no good, if no point paying $75 if they're useless, which these ones are. The problem obviously is the car is left-hand drive in the US and is right-hand drive in Australia, so they don't fit. Anyway, let's get on with today. I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I'm going to sort that out Monday. Let's get on with today. Alright. Talk to you soon. Okay, so where do we get to today? Up the top here we've got the front of the engine back together. See here we've got new radiator hoses in, new thermostat housing. One thing I did find out that I might have to change is the serpentine belt idler is not much chop, so I have to do that. And I need a new O-ring for my oil dipstick, which I'll get to later in the week. But spend most of the time today down here. You can see my mate. What we did here was we had some new struts go in. You can see running up the back there is a new braided brake line, and the new calipers went on because at Queensland Raceway we wrecked the pistons, we wrecked the pads, we wrecked everything. It was just cheaper to get a whole new exchange caliper, so that's the new caliper on. And because we wrecked all that stuff, we also wrecked the disc, so we got new discs on there. So that's it. It's suspension is ready to go. Just bleed the brakes and that should be good to go. So that'll do, I think, for today.
Alright, so got a fair bit done over the weekend. Pretty happy with that, actually. I'm going to spend a vast majority of tomorrow trying to sort something out with the power steering. I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen there. Maybe I can find some locally, or I go to NZ and get them to make some for me. Not sure, but we'll get that fixed and hopefully get the power steering working by the end of the week. I did actually think about converting it to a manual steering, but read on the internet that's not the way to go. But I'll speak to some experts tomorrow and see if that's a possibility as well. Anyway, that's it for now. Like I said, I should do a lot of work on the car this week, and hopefully get it to a space where we can actually put an entry in for Wakefield by the end of this week. So stay tuned for that exciting news. Alright, till next time.